I'll skip the science part of the lecture. I want to just kind of illustrate. This is a very simple, what's called a hypersynchronous icing model as to how financial collapses occur in complex systems. And I'll just go through it very briefly. I'm assuming a couple assumptions, 310 million people. I'm assuming that every one of them has a T factor. T factor is your critical threshold. And just to explain that, we have about 200 people in the room. What would happen if 3 of you got up right now and just ran out the door really fast? What would the rest of you do? I dare say that you would do nothing. You would think that was odd or rude, or say maybe they got a text message, but they're leaving, I'm going to stay. But what if 100 of you got up and ran out of the door? What would the rest of you do? I dare say you'd be right behind them. In other words, you wouldn't know what was going on, but you'd say, gee, maybe the place is on fire, I don't get it, they're leaving, I'm right behind them. So in that example, your T factor, your critical threshold, is greater than 3, less than 100. So that's just a way to think about it numerically. We all have a different one. Ours change. Some days we're a little bolder, some days we're a little more nervous, but those are the critical thresholds. And so I want to hypothesize 100 people quit the dollar. When I say quit the dollar, I mean that they lose confidence in the dollar as a store of value. They no longer want dollars. If they get paid in dollars, they're going to buy gold, buy hard assets, buy art, buy land, buy energy, buy something, but anything other than stay in the dollar. So the way that this is set up is that in case 1, the subcritical state, we have 1,000 people and their critical threshold is 500. What that means is that if 500 people quit the dollar, they quit the dollar. And then so forth. So the next million is 10,000, 10 million is 100,000. You can see the data here. So what happens when 100 people quit the dollar in case 1? 100 people reject the dollar. What happens in case 1? The answer is nothing happens, because 100 is not 500. In other words, you haven't hit the critical threshold for the next group. So it's like throwing a match in a dry forest and the match fizzles out and nothing else happens. Now let's go over to case 2. I changed 2 things. I lowered this threshold from 500 to 100. I lowered this threshold from 10,000 to 1,000. But the rest of it's the same. If you look at everything else down here, this is all the same. So I've only changed the preferences of 3 1,000ths of 1%. 3 1,000ths of 1% of my population have a new critical threshold. Now what happens when 100 people quit the dollar? Well, if 100 people quit the dollar, you've hit the threshold for the next 1,000. So 1,000 quit. At 1,000, you've hit the threshold for the next million, so they quit. At 1,000,000, you're past the threshold for the next 10 million, and they quit. And so on down the line until the entire population repudiates the dollar and loses confidence. Now here's the point. I didn't have to change the minds of 300 million people. I only had to change the minds of 3 1,000ths of 1% to completely change the outcome from stability to a catastrophic collapse. That's customary of complex systems. That's how complex systems work. This is the math and the model behind financial panics. You can describe it as herd mentality, a lot of metaphors for it. But this is an extremely fragile system. As I say, it didn't take much to change it from stability to collapse. This is what the Fed does not understand. The Fed's working in a world of equilibrium models. We're living in a world of complex models that work like this. So confidence in the dollar can collapse very quickly if the Fed keeps printing, which they appear they're going to do because they don't understand that it doesn't work. I want to just jump ahead to the future and suggest...
Kindly, if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask you to really wrap up in order, because we're really running against time and people have to catch flights, that's why. So
we'll finish up right now.
Thank you.
I just want to suggest that there are four outcomes, and we talked about them in our question: multiple reserve currencies, special drawing rights, a gold standard, and the collapse of the financial system. I think collapse is the most likely through a combination of denial, delay, wishful thinking, and bad models. But just to kind of jump ahead, if you do have a gold standard, I'm not predicting a gold standard, but I'm saying if you have one, you've got to get the price right. And the implied non-deflationary price of gold this is a global money supply, global M1 with 40% backing is $7,000 an ounce. A global M2 with 100% backing is $44,000 an ounce. I'm not predicting $44,000 gold. I'm just saying when you hear numbers like this, they're not invented. These are the actual numbers you get when you compare paper money supplies, physical gold supplies, and ask yourself, what price does gold have to be to support the existing trade and commerce in the world without causing deflation. So this is actually derived from a methodology, not just a big number to kind of grab a headline. These are my books. Everything we discussed here and a lot more is in both of these books. The Death of Money is the new book. It's out today, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.